This lecture was prepared by the speaker in early March 2025 and recorded in April of the same year. It was originally intended to be published in the following weeks, but the unexpected death of Pope Francis and the rapid election of his successor compelled us to release this material now, due to the fact that its author, back in March of this year, suggested that the next pope might be an American, in order for the prophecies of Revelation to be fulfilled.
The statement that the beast from the door earth causes the earth and its inhabitants to worship the first. Beast refers to the establishment of laws in America, the acceptance of which will be tantamount to worshipping the Pope. In the face of global threats, humanity will seek a world leader. The prophecy indicates that America will lead this and will point to the Holy See. And when perhaps an American sits on the throne of Peter, the exaltation of the papacy in the USA will become a reality. Is it possible for Protestant America to exalt the Roman papacy? In the end times, America will rise to become a world power. This was revealed to John at the end of the 1st century on Patmos in the visions of the Apocalypse. John wrote, "And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a ram's, and he spoke as a dragon." It looks different from the other beasts in the Bible's prophecies. Those are predatory, but this one is gentle and has lamb's horns, the animal associated with Jesus. The others emerged from the turbulent sea of nations, destroying those that came before them. The beast from the earth, instead of conquering others, appeared in an uncivilized territory and gradually grew in strength. It did not arise among the warring nations of the old world. It appeared in the new world, which is why John saw it coming up from the earth like a sprouting plant. Here, he used the Greek word anabaino, which describes the upward movement of growing plants. To rise, to grow, to sprout. Christopher Columbus, in his search for a route to India, reached the islands of the Bahama Archipelago, Guadeloupe, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Panama. Later, the geographer, Jew Amerigo Vespucci, explored the coasts of America, determining that the lands discovered by Columbus were not India. They were named America after Vespucci. The coasts of America were settled by the Spanish, French, and Dutch. A turning point came with the arrival of English settlers. In 1607, they established the settlement of Jamestown in Virginia and began to settle between the Atlantic and the Appalachians. By the beginning of the 18th century, there were already 13 English colonies there. In 1776, the Congress of these colonies proclaimed the independence of the United States in Philadelphia with the Declaration of Independence. In 1787, the Constitutional Convention adopted the Constitution of the United States. When 2 years later, George Washington was elected president, the young nation had a population of 4 million. But more immigrants kept arriving. By 1850, the population had reached 25 million, and by 1900, 75 million, while America had quadrupled its territory. After the Civil War, America experienced the highest economic growth in the world, consistently exceeding 10%. It wrested industrial supremacy from England, transcontinental railroads were built, technical innovations were introduced, and exports tripled. The beast coming up out of the earth has horns like a lamb's. What do they mean? The Puritans persecuted in England, who were the first to colonize America, in search of refuge from the oppression of kings and the church, wanted a government based on civil and religious liberty. They enshrined this idea in the Declaration of Independence, stating that all men are created equal and are endowed with the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Personal and religious freedom became the foundation of the American Constitution, and it is these freedoms, depicted as 2 horns like those of a lamb, that are the source of its strength and prosperity. Until the First and Second World Wars, the USA pursued the policy of isolationism. During the First World War, the Germans sank the British ocean liner Lusitania. 785 people died, including 124 citizens of neutral America. The Zimmermann telegram, which revealed an alliance between Mexico and Germany, was also made public. America entered the First World War, leading the Entente to victory. In 1941, Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor and the subsequent declaration of war on America by Germany and Italy forced the United States to enter the Second World War, which determined its outcome. After the war, America became the world's largest economy, as well as a financial and military superpower. It achieved global primacy and broke away from its policy of isolationism. The apocalypse foretold that, as its power grew, its innocence would begin to fade and it would speak like a dragon. This trend can be observed in American politics. When America realized its advantage, Pan-Americanism and imperial thinking emerged in its politics, aiming to achieve the status of a world power. It intervenes in events beyond its borders, builds footholds in various parts of the globe, and enters into alliances. When, in 1991, Iraq occupied Kuwait, the Americans and their allies carried out Operation Desert Storm and liberated Kuwait. The Middle East holds strategic importance for the United States. Later, in order to secure their interests in this part of the world, the Americans launched the Second Gulf War in 2003, defeating Iraq and changing its government. When Russia invaded Ukraine, America, explaining that Ukraine is not a member of NATO, did not come to its military defense. Although Kuwait was also not a member of NATO, such an intervention would have been too risky and would have led to a nuclear war. The Americans supported Ukraine with arms deliveries, money, sanctions, and intelligence, hoping that Russia would bleed out and become weakened. Without incurring their own losses, they wanted to use Ukrainians far from their own borders to eliminate Russia from its role as a great power. Putin struck in order to push NATO out of Eastern Europe and to prevent Ukraine from being admitted to it. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov said that Russia and other players do not agree for the world to become a global village managed by a sheriff from Washington. China, dissatisfied with America's dominance, sides with Russia in order to prevent the Americanization of Asia. China does not love Russia, but it follows the principle that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. China competes with America, and relations between them are tense. When Trump took office as president, he began to make arrangements with Putin, whom the US Senate recognized as a war criminal. He began to lay claims to Canada, to Greenland, and Panama. He further escalated the situation with China and other countries and suggested to the Palestinians that they leave Gaza and live elsewhere. We don't know how current events will unfold, but from the book of Revelation it follows that in the end times, America will be the superpower, just as ancient Rome once was. And we can see how almost the entire world seeks its favor. The beast from the earth, with horns like a lamb, symbolizing personal and religious freedom, speaks like a dragon. Horns like a lamb's, and the voice of a dragon point to a contradiction between America's declarations and its actions. What does speech mean in prophetic symbolism? The speech of a nation is the decisions made by its authorities. The time will come when America will break the principles of freedom and tolerance that it once recognized as the foundation of its policy and will ally itself with the beast from the sea. John Ichabod wrote, and it exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence. It causes the earth and its inhabitants to worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. The beast from the sea is the papacy. In the past, it subordinated secular authorities to itself and persecuted dissenters. Revelation foretells that in the future, the American government will begin to act in the same way as the papacy. There will be religious intolerance in the United States. It will be open, carried out in the sight of the beast. The statement that the beast from the earth causes the earth and its inhabitants to worship the first beast refers to the establishment of laws in America, the acceptance of which will be tantamount to worshipping the Pope. This will be contrary to the provisions of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. The founders of the nation sought to prevent the Church from using the authority of secular power because they knew that the result would be intolerance and persecution. The Constitution of America guarantees that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of any religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and that membership in a particular denomination shall never determine the holding of any public office in the United States. Only by violating religious freedom can the authorities enforce compliance with religious mandates. Then the beast with lamb-like horns will speak like a dragon. When will this happen? John was given a clue that it will happen when the sword wound of the sea beast is healed. During the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, the dominance of the Church was broken. In 1798, the French occupied Rome, declared it a republic, and abolished the Papal States. They arrested Pius VI, who died in prison. A Catholic historian states, "It seemed that the papacy had truly been destroyed. Funeral orations were delivered over it, and tombstones were erected for it. Its fate was symbolized by a monument in front of the Castel Sant'Angelo, where the goddess of liberty trampled the tiara." Soon a new pope was elected, Pius VII, but Napoleon Bonaparte forced him to renounce his temporal power. After Napoleon's fall, the Congress of Vienna restored the Papal States in Italy. During the springtime of nations, the Italians abolished the Papal States, establishing the Roman Republic. But France and Austria intervened militarily, dissolved the Roman Republic, and restored the Papal States. It was not until 1870 that the Italians once again took Rome and abolished the Papal States. Pope Pius IX shut himself away in the Vatican and declared himself its prisoner. All these events, the Enlightenment and rationalism, the spirit of the French Revolution, communism and atheism, the rise of democracy, independence movements, the separation of church and state, religious tolerance and equal rights, led to the loss of mere secular power and prestige by the Church, which the book of Revelation describes as the wound inflicted on the beast by the sword. The Pope remained only a religious leader. John wrote that the wound from the sword would heal, and the Church would regain its former influence. The First and Second Vatican Councils, the Lateran treaties, and the policies of the current popes are leading to the reconstruction of the Church's power, and in the near future, the United States will contribute to making the Vatican a global moral leader. Satan will support America's actions on behalf of the papacy by performing astonishing miracles in this country, in order to persuade the nation to set up an image in honor of the beast from the sea. He performs great wonders, even bringing fire down from heaven to earth in the sight of people, and deceives the inhabitants of the earth by the miracles he is allowed to perform in the presence of the beast, urging the inhabitants of the earth to set up an image to the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The beast from the earth will make an image of the beast from the sea in its honor. In other words, America will become a copy of the papacy to its glory. John uses the dative case here. To whom? For what? To the beast from the sea, that is, the Vatican. The United States will create a copy of the beast from the sea in its honor. America will exalt the Holy See. Is it possible that Protestant America would exalt the Roman papacy? In 1776, there were only about 25,000 Catholics in the English colonies of America. The founders of the United States, remembering the tyranny of the Church in Europe, did not want to tie the state to it. In 1779, John Adams, the future President of America, wrote in a letter to Congress regarding relations with the Vatican, "Congress will most likely never send an envoy to His Holiness, for His Holiness would have no benefit from his services, and even less so if he were to be sent on the condition of accepting a Catholic legate or nuncio That is, in other words, an ecclesiastical tyrant, which one can only hope to avoid. The United States, in its wisdom, will never allow such a person onto its territory. Since that day, much has changed in America. In 1961, for the first time, a Catholic, John Kennedy, was elected president. In 1984, during Ronald Reagan's presidency and the pontificate of John Paul II, the United States and the Vatican established official diplomatic relations for the first time in history. But this was met with resistance from a significant portion of society. American human rights organizations and major Protestant churches then filed a lawsuit in federal court in Philadelphia against the establishment of diplomatic relations between America and the papacy. The complaint was based on the allegation that diplomatic relations with the Vatican constituted a violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution. Specifically, the prohibition against establishing a religion contained therein, as well as the Fifth Amendment, which guarantees equal treatment. The federal court in Philadelphia dismissed the complaint. The Court of Appeals upheld the position of the federal court, and the Supreme Court did not take up the case. Currently, about 51% of Americans identify as Protestants and 24% as Catholics. But since Protestantism consists of many denominations and is fragmented, the Catholic Church is the largest in America. The USA and the Vatican are drawing closer together, having shared interests, such as, for example, during the time of Reagan and John Paul II, the overthrow of the Soviet Union. A recent example of support for the Catholic Church by President Trump's administration was Vice President Vance's speech at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast on February 28, 2025, in Washington. Against the backdrop of the papal coat of arms, Vance delivered a speech of fundamental importance to the Roman Church, declaring that the current United States government would help Catholics around the world. The Vice President said, "We will be the greatest defenders of religious freedom and rights of conscience. I am convinced that these actions will benefit Catholics all over the world." Vance is the second Catholic Vice President in the history of the United States. I would like to ask him whether the Trump administration will also protect minority faiths from discrimination by the Catholic Church, where it is the dominant religion. The crisis will favor an alliance between America and the Vatican in the face of global threats. Humanity will be looking for a global leader. Prophecy indicates that America will take the lead in this and will point to the Holy See. And when perhaps an American sits on the throne of Peter, the exaltation of the papacy in the USA will become a reality, and it will be granted to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast will speak and cause that all who do not worship the image of the beast will be killed. He also causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. John wrote that the beast from the earth gave breath to the image of the beast from the sea. To breathe life into something means to bring something to life, to make it function. The government of the United States will give legal power to the alliance between America and the Vatican. It will pass laws obligating the nation to accept a new religious and social order. Those who resist will face consequences, which will escalate into persecution. But isn't the religious unity that Jesus prayed for a noble goal? Yes, but not at the expense of truth. Rejecting the authority of the Bible in favor of church tradition for the sake of unity is unfaithfulness to God. According to the Bible, the sign that defines belonging to God is the seventh day of the week, Saturday. In the fourth commandment of the biblical Decalogue, God commanded, "Remember to keep the Sabbath day holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. By keeping the Sabbath, we show our faithfulness to the Creator as our God. Observing the Sabbath is a sign of the covenant between God and his true worshippers. God says, I also gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between me and them, so that they would know that I, the Lord, am the one who sanctifies them. And I, the Lord, am your God. Follow my commandments and observe my laws and do them. Keep my Sabbaths holy and let them be a sign between me and you, so that it may be known that I, the Lord, am your God. What is the mark of the beast? The opposite of the Sabbath. The first day of the week, introduced by the church in place of the Sabbath. Just as the Sabbath is a sign of God's authority, so Sunday is a sign of the authority of the papacy. I remember when, during my studies at the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary in Podkovaleshna, my professor, Rizard Charchuk, brought the Book of Decrees of the Second Vatican Council to our theology class. In the section concerning Sunday, he showed us the decree, stating that Sunday, the eighth day, is a sign of the authority of the Church. Catholic theologians point out to Protestants that, while they declare the Bible to be the foundation of their faith and protest against the distortions of the Church, they reject the Sabbath, commanded in the Bible, and observe Sunday, which was established by the Church. Cardinal Louis de Ségur, in his reflections on contemporary Protestantism, wrote, "It was the Catholic Church that transferred the day of rest to Sunday. Therefore, the observance of Sunday by Protestants is a tribute that they involuntarily pay to the authority of that church." In the Catholic record, a Catholic theologian wrote, "Sunday is the sign of our authority. The Church is above the Bible, and the proof of this is the change of the observance of the Sabbath." According to Catholic theologians, the very act of changing the Sabbath to Sunday is itself a sign of the Church's authority, a change that was also accepted by Protestants, because by observing Sunday, they acknowledge the Church's right to establish holy days and to treat the failure to observe them as a sin. The nation will be required to accept Sunday worship in the name of unity. Such a solution is realistic. The churches differ from one another in matters of faith, principles they are unwilling to give up. However, Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants, except for Sabbatarians, are in agreement when it comes to Sunday worship. Those who accept Sunday will receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. Those who receive the mark on their forehead are the ones who consciously reject the sanctity of the Sabbath in favor of Sunday. Those who receive the mark on their right hand are opportunists, compromisers. They do not agree with Sunday worship, but in order not to expose themselves, they will take a passive stance and comply with what the Sunday law will require. Is it possible for someone to be persecuted for not observing Sunday? Yes. History provides examples of people being persecuted for not attending Sunday services. In the year 1279 in Poland, the statutes of the papal legate Philip introduced parish compulsion, meaning the obligation to attend Sunday Mass in one's own parish. Parish compulsion was also enforced in other countries of medieval Europe. Those who did not comply with the parish obligation were accused of heresy and cruelly punished. It was similar in Protestant America. Here is the content of the Sunday law introduced in 1610 in the state of Virginia. Every man and woman is to go to church on Sunday morning, to listen to the sermon, and in the afternoon, to appear at church for catechism. For failing to fulfill this duty, the first time, the earnings of the entire upcoming week are to be confiscated. For a second failure to comply, the punishment is flogging and confiscation of a week's earnings. For a third offense, the penalty is death. This first American Sunday law is not enforced, but it has also not been repealed. And in 1961, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that Sunday laws are constitutional. John Paul II, in the encyclical Centesimus Annus, called for the support of secular authorities for Sunday. In the letter Dies Domini, he reminded of the obligation to keep Sunday holy. In it, he urges Christians to advocate for secular Sunday legislation for the common good of humanity. Similar initiatives are being undertaken by Protestants in America. They are trying to circumvent the constitutional separation of church and state by emphasizing Sunday as a day for the family. In 1986, Protestants from the Lord's Day Alliance, an organization promoting Sunday observance, paid a visit to John Paul II and presented him with a plaque inscribed, "The Lord's Day Alliance of the United States expresses its gratitude to His Holiness, Pope John Paul II, for his outstanding contributions to promoting Sunday worship throughout the world." The president of the Lord's Day Alliance said, "Our goal is to elevate Sunday observance to the same status as the seventh day had for Israel." When asked whether he would sentence a person who does not observe Sunday to death, he replied, "That is exactly what I mean. Our actions are aimed precisely in that direction." The Catechism of the Catholic Church also calls on the faithful to seek support for Sunday from secular authorities. In point 21 and 88, it teaches, Christians should demand that Sundays and church holidays be recognized as legal holidays. If the secular authorities recognize Sunday as a legal holiday, the time will come when, for the sake of a misunderstood common good, they will begin to legally require its observance. Catholics are obliged to attend Mass, but prophecy foretells that in the name of a wrongly defined unity, Sunday will be imposed on everyone without exception. Sunday laws will target Christians who observe the Sabbath. Punishments will fall upon those who keep the Sabbath and do not have the mark or the number of the name of the Roman papacy. The prophet wrote, "Here is wisdom needed. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Solving the riddle of the number 666, as John wrote, requires wisdom and understanding. There are various interpretations of it, but none of them can be verified. Now, as they pertain to the future, I will present the one that I consider to be correct. One of the titles of the popes is the Vicar of the Son of God, in Latin, Vicarius Filii Dei. It was first adopted by Pope Nicholas V the Great in the 9th century. This title also appears in the Decree of Gratian, a collection of canon law of the Roman Church, compiled by the then lawyer from Bologna, Gratian. Professor Weston of the Catholic University in Washington stated, "The title, Vicarius Filii Dei, is very common as a title applied to the Pope. In the Latin language, Roman numerals are also letters. So if we add up the letters of the Latin title, Vicarius Filii Dei, as Roman numerals, we get the number, part 666. One issue of the American Catholic Sunday Visitor states that the title of the Roman Pope is Vicarius Filii Dei, and if we replace the capital letters of this title in Latin with their numerical equivalents and add them together, we get the number 666. The Catholic translation of the Bible by Jakub Wujek, in a footnote to verse 18, explains, "The number of the beast that is of the man whom it signifies is the sum obtained by adding together the individual consonant letters of its name, taken as numbers." The Protestant churches, the Vatican, and the American government will unite to establish national unity and a new religious and social order centered around the recognition of the sanctity of Sunday. As a result, Christians who observe the divine Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, designated by the fourth commandment of the biblical Decalogue, will become targets of persecution.